Doc, welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
Are you kidding me? I have this article. Here's what I want to set for everybody. We're going to talk about a problem, and then we're going to talk about a solution in the last segment that you got to wait to hear because it's about the Eucharist and what Doc is doing up in San Francisco to help bring about a greater love for Jesus and the real presence. So we're going to tie this in. Doc, this article from the Daily Mail, it says health effects of marijuana lay bare. Marijuana is behind 3 in 10 schizophrenia cases and can be a death sentence to pregnant users. But unfortunately, the Biden administration still wants to ease restrictions on the drug. I mean, there's more than 40 million adults use marijuana, more than double 10 years ago. So we're really having some trends, and we have statistics. The long-term effects of the recent legislation are now just becoming known. A nationwide social experiment launched by the wave of marijuana legalizations is finally bearing results in the form of higher depression rates and addiction. So I'm going to bring this up and then throw it to you because for those who don't know your background, Doc, first respond, but give us, you've been in ER rooms, and I'll just throw this at you. I know I read the article about guys my age who smoked marijuana in the 60s and then started doing it now, and they're in the ER room because the THC level was so much higher that they're in terrible shape and they're going into the ER rooms in a high number. So I want to first say, give us your background because you've been a doctor for years and you also work at the ER rooms. You've been responsible for a lot of that. Can you share a little background for our listeners, please, to refresh our memory?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Terry. So I was trained as an emergency physician, trained actually in Los Angeles at Harbor UCLA, yep. And then went on to faculty at Stanford and a variety of other places. And then transferred out of that to private practice. Mm-hmm. And so I managed and hired medical directors literally in many states, but wow. Primarily in the West. Mm-hmm. So I set up ERs, hired and trained the medical directors.
Wow.
And so I've seen what's been going on for, a couple decades now.
Wow.
And frankly, that's why I got into all this with the Catholic Church, because I noticed back in early 2000s that I was seeing more and more children in my emergency department with suicide attempts.
Yes.
Whereas before, adolescents, there's always adolescent issues and things like that, but not with, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. Wow. And sure enough, these studies showed, there was a study that looked at suicide attempts amongst the youth between 2007 and 2017, a 50% increase.
Horrible.
It's just incredible. And then with fear of death imposed by the COVID lockdowns, a 50% increase in suicide attempts by adolescent girls.
Wow.
So we're destroying our youth left and right. There's this attack on the family. And again, as a doctor, it became pretty obvious to me that we're in the midst of a huge spiritual battle over truth.
Absolutely.
Right? And part of that truth is what's good for you, what's not good for you, what medicines work and what medicines don't. And also, are we really just random molecules put together, or there really was a creator God? And that's why we're going to get into the second segment, but that's really why Archbishop Corleone, who also the warrior for truth and faith. That's why there are 21st century Eucharistic miracles. God is showing us, no. I create life.
Absolutely.
I created both the physical world and the supernatural or immaterial world or invisible world.
Yes.
Life does not come from the physical world. And that's what the 21st century Eucharistic miracles show, amongst other things. We to go into all those. But this is just related to the medical issues. So what we've done is we've removed God from our schools and we replaced him with Satan, right? So we put, because now we can tell children that their feelings are what determines their genetics, which is anti-science. We can tell children that they're not valuable human beings, a unique human being. they're lucky that their mom didn't abort them because their mom was going to be a movie star.
Right.
So is it any wonder that there's a skyrocketing depression, anxiety, suicidality, anxiety, multiple others? And so people, when you don't have God, you got to turn to yourself.
That's
and,
right.
and yourself isn't God. So you then look for drugs and other ways to calm your nerves and make you feel better. And so that's why we're seeing this huge rise of increase in violence in our youth.
Yes, it's all connected.
Anxiety, depression.
Yes.
It's all related. It's spiritual warfare. And unfortunately, we have so-called Catholic government leaders that are promoting this satanic attack on our children, frankly.
And Doc, I just want to jump in and say there's 8 million adults that are men, working age men, that are not working today. And I looked at the statistics. They average over 40 hours a week looking on the internet and entertaining themselves or watching YouTube or whatever it is. But the increase we have 40 million adults. That's an increase of 16%. That's 16% of the population are using marijuana. That's just a huge amount of people being self-medicated. And my question to you as a medical doctor, and obviously on the spiritual, and we are going to get to that, the Eucharist and how meaning and purpose of life. I want to get to that this next segment. But I want to get your response to what the effect of illicit drugs, and I say illicit, when I was a kid, marijuana was not legal. Now we have 40 states that have legalized marijuana. And I thought about the car accidents. I've seen statistics on that where people get into accidents because they're high. There was a time when they said you couldn't get high on marijuana. What's the difference with the marijuana of the 1960s and the 2022?
Right. So it gets again back to truth in medicine. We've lost truth in medicine as we've lost truth in a lot of other things. So so the end of the day, part of the problem is that the concentration of the active ingredient THC is much higher, much higher concentration. And so it's easier to overdose. So while back in the 60s and I guess even 70s, it was rare in the emergency departments for them to see, problems from intoxication, but not seizures, not deaths, not schizophrenia. But now the concentrations are so much higher. But here again, it goes back to that original thing. Why do you need narcotics? Why do you need drugs? Because again, this problem of despair and depression, and I'm worthless as a human being, and there is no afterlife. So there's symptoms of all the same problems, but that's the medical part. But again,
goes back to the spiritual.
With this, it's the same thing with COVID.
Yes,
with the vaccine.
Yes,
we did the same thing. We typically in what I call prehistoric medicine prior to March 2020.
I like that line, prehistoric.
Yeah. So prehistoric medicine, we used to do what's called a risk-benefit ratio for any treatment, whether it's marijuana or whatever. And it wasn't a financial, it was what's the risk of the treatment versus the benefit of the treatment. So with the COVID vaccine, and just focusing on children, the vaccine doesn't protect. And it has harms, as we've now learned and we warned early on. But it's now been proven. Again, we would suppress the truth now in all aspects of government. Everything is suppressed. The media and the government are colluding to suppress the truth about these things. And so the problem is that people don't hear the truth.
Amen.
Fortunately, people have wisened up about getting the COVID for their children because it only causes harm. The risk-benefit ratio is upside down for children. So early on, the vaccine probably did work for elderly people, but certainly not now. It's not working because it's, again, natural laws. Viruses become more infective and less lethal. But again, we don't go by natural laws anymore because
that's
we don't,
sure.
we don't report true science anymore.
Right.
So that's what's going on with that is that the benefit of marijuana. Originally, remember, it was used medicinally because it did reduce nausea in cancer patients.
Right. I read that.
But now to use it recreational stuff, you're not, they're not taking it because they have nausea problems.
Yeah.
They're taking it for, to get high because again, they're in despair. The world is not treating them well. The world will entertain them, but doesn't treat them well. So what's happening is they're turning to, substance just like alcohol has traditionally been, and same with heroin. And these are people that are in despair, need help, and they turn to drugs, which unfortunately decreases their lifespan and has problems. So this idea that, again, it was sold back when it was approved at the first states, I forget which ones were the first ones to do it.
Colorado.
It's going to be harmless. Well, again, it was at a lower dose. So it was more equivalent to alcohol, but now it's at higher concentration and it's in candy and everything. So people take a lot of it and they don't realize how much they're taking.
Wow. And
so we're seeing the results. So again, if we're honest, we'd say, wait, this, we've done this experiment. It's harming our children and adults. Let's get rid of it.